Africa. Timeless, yet modern. Bountiful, yet barren. Home to exotic animals, many of which are ferocious killers. Among Africa's mix of danger and serenity is another deadly force. Lake Nyos, known as the Killer Lake. Lake Nyos may look inviting, but below its surface waits an invisible, silent, and scentless killer, an unusually high concentration of carbon dioxide gas. Professor George Kling of the University of Michigan was a member of the scientific team that investigated this killer lake.
In 1986, Lake Nyos in Cameroon, West Africa, released a tremendous amount of CO2 that killed about 1,800 people. The Lake Nyos event took the scientific community by surprise. Nothing like this had ever happened on record, and it was therefore extremely rare.
The rumblings in the lake began in the dark of night, but it wasn't until the following morning that the awful truth emerged. Happy Noel from the nearby village of Bana remembers it well.
Something happened in the village, and a lot of people were scared and a lot of people were running away. There was an emanation of natural gas from a lake, and the gas was a killer gas.
According to Professor Kling and other scientists, Lake Nyos had virtually exploded. But how could a body of water actually erupt?
What's happening in Lake Nyos is that CO2-charged springs are exiting into the bottom of the lake. The lake is stratified, that is, the surface waters and the bottom waters don't mix, so the CO2 can build up in the bottom waters to tremendous pressures.
The tremendously pressurized condition at Lake Nyos has a commonplace counterpart: an ordinary bottle of carbonated water.
When you look at a soda bottle, you don't see any gas bubbles because the pressure from the cap is keeping them in solution. The same situation exists at the bottom of Lake Nyos, where the upper surface waters act as a lid and keep the gas dissolved in the bottom waters. And you can see when you release the pressure, the gas comes out of solution.
Scientists don't know what triggered the explosion at Lake Nyos, but they have a theory about what it may have looked like.
When the gas bubbles left the lake, they would have exited with a tremendous velocity, at least 200 miles an hour, and depending on the conditions, perhaps up to supersonic speeds. The energy associated with this gas release would have created a fountain thrown up into the air that would have overtopped the clock tower.
Although the experts offer a scientific explanation, local villagers were suspicious that the deaths at Nyos were the work of evil spirits.
The African belief, there is nothing for nothing. People are still very attached to their cultural and traditional way of belief or doing things.
Although the explosion itself was huge, it was the emission of carbon dioxide gas that proved to be the silent killer at Nyos. Normally, CO2 is not deadly. However, in high concentration, it displaces oxygen in the air. We continue breathing, but ultimately we suffocate.
In this simple demonstration, I've added some frozen CO2, dry ice, to water. And the point that I want to illustrate is that the CO2 is actually more dense than air. And so in the Lake Nyos disaster, when the CO2 filled up inside the basin, it spilled over that spillway and actually ran downhill through the river valleys. So you see that the CO2 is coming out and going straight down and then moving on down, even flowing over the edge there.
Scientists estimate that Lake Nyos released 1 cubic kilometer of carbon dioxide gas. For a visual reference, consider that the amount of ash released during the eruption of Mount St. Helens was only 1/3 of a cubic kilometer. This wave of oxygen-displacing gas rolled through the countryside, asphyxiating almost every living creature within a 24-kilometer radius, including 1,800 unsuspecting people in the village of Nyos. The horrific disaster at Lake Nyos focused attention on Cameroon, and relief came from all over the globe. members of the international scientific community gathered to investigate the phenomenon. Professor Kling, who had worked in Cameroon previously, remembers his first visit back to the area.
It was an eerie feeling returning to the lake after the event. The people that we knew that helped guide us up to the lake the first time were gone. The people in the villages that we stopped in and talked to were also gone. These events were so rare and so strange that it really took a coming together of very many disciplines within science to understand them and to try to solve them.
Scientists discovered the carbon dioxide-enriched springs were still emitting gas into the bottom waters of Lake Nyos. If not alleviated, Lake Nyos would explode again. After much debate, the scientists settled on a test for a potential solution. The plan involved sinking a giant pipe into the lake's pressurized bottom waters, which would release the trapped gas in a steady flow, allowing it to mix safely into the atmosphere.
The idea of degassing with the pipe is actually quite simple. You put a pipe vertically down to the bottom of the lake, and with a pump at the surface, you start to bring water up toward the surface. Now, as this water gets closer to the surface, the weight of water above it in the pipe decreases. Because that pressure is reduced, it's like taking the cap off of a soda bottle, the gas starts to come out of solution inside the pipe. When that happens, this gas-water mixture rises very rapidly toward the surface. Once the fountain is established at the surface, you can remove the pump, and the entire degassing process runs itself without any external energy.
Led by French scientist Michel Holfax, the degassing team toiled beside Lake Nyos for 4 weeks, crafting a test pipe. But would the technology actually work?
Probably the hardest part of the degassing procedure is applying what works on paper and what works in our nice laboratories in a region that is in the middle of nowhere in many senses. The roads getting there are very poor, and things break in the field. It rains, it's never exactly like you want it to be.
But with the help of many locals, the test pipe was in place, and the pump motor was fired up. And to the great relief of the scientists, their invention and creativity worked.
Well, if I had the genie lamp and 3 wishes, the first wish would be, of course, that this disaster never occurred. The second wish, I think, would be that we would be able to raise about $1 million so that we could install on a large scale the pipes that are necessary for the degassing. Once we have those pipes in place, they will essentially be self-cleansing for the lake, and there would be no worries for the people living around the lake of any future disasters.
While the degassing tests of Lake Nyos demonstrated a viable method of solving the problem, tragically, the solution is yet to be implemented. The Cameroonian government has not allocated the money to fund the degassing project, and the springs continue feeding gas into the lake. Currently, the pressure is higher than it was prior to the 1986 explosion. Until the money is raised and the degassing pipes are in place, the killer lake of Cameroon is not tamed. It is merely sleeping, waiting to kill again.